The judge yesterday had originally rejected Newsom's emergency request. But guess what? California's going to accept it. They got to accept the National Guard. So the way this all went down was Newsom's like, no, you can't come here. You can't be operating the National Guard and the Marines and this and that. He sent 4,000 National Guard troops in. Newsom's like, you can't do this. You can't do this. This is my state, our state. Trump's like, yeah, but you're not taking care of things. Look at Karen Bass. I mean, it's a miracle she's there, right? Usually she's off at some party in Africa. Remember the fires? We had that whole ordeal. So they weren't doing anything. They were allowing the chaos to spiral. You've seen a lot of the protest video. You've probably seen it on X. We've shown a little bit here, but suffice it to say, they have a problem. And you can frame it however you want. You have a problem in California. And it's so bad that Karen Bass actually had to put in a curfew to try and control this problem. Well, the president's like, I'm not going to allow this to get out of control. These people are U.S. citizens, so I'm going to help. Gavin Newsom doesn't want my help. I don't care if Gavin Newsom doesn't want my help. I'm sending in the troops. And so originally he sent them in. Gavin flipped out. He took it to the court, and the court came back and said, you know what? You're fine to do it. So breaking news, ladies and gentlemen, the Court of Appeals in California, Federal Court of Appeals, deciding late last night that indeed Donald Trump has the jurisdiction. This is a big deal. Trump's National Guard stays. So at 12 noon today, Newsom was hoping for a little bit of a victory run, right? And he's not going to get it. He's not going to get it. Poor Gavin.
Location for training exercises. But there's the bottom line. The police do policing. Military, it's for the battlefield. You know, the idea that these unbelievably brave young men and women that I work with, that we have had the benefit of their extraordinary contribution all across this state. I gave you 3 examples. What more evidence do we need of the work they did during the wildfires in Los Angeles and all the work they did to secure locations and keep property and personal lives safe over the course of the last few months? These folks are now being commandeered to do ICE raids. You've seen the photographs. That ends tomorrow at noon. And the notion that the United States active duty Marines, these heroes, would be used to militarize the streets of an American city is an abomination. Founding fathers did not live and die to see that happen.
Okay, well, you know what, Gavin, nice little speech there. Guess what happened? You said it was all going to end at noon today, but the court decided otherwise. The appellate court said, you know what, California, you're going to have to deal. You're going to have to keep the National Guard there. Because you see, legally, he has every right to do this. I mean, you know, look, we hate to go back to 1963 in Alabama, but there was a time when you had to do exactly this because the feds have to come in that case, because of integration, because you had some people, the governor of Alabama at the time, that did not want to integrate. You know what? That's when the feds stepped in because the law was the law. Well, guess what the law is here? The law is that the feds have supremacy over the states when it comes to naturalization. It actually was challenged in 2012 out in Arizona, and guess what they decided? They decided that, again, the feds had the jurisdiction. So if the feds have the jurisdiction, if ICE has the jurisdiction, and you are impeding law enforcement and not allowing them to do their job, then guess what? I think you got kind of just a little teeny bit of a problem out there in California, to which you seem to be defying federal orders, and you can't have a country. Now can you? Unless you have some semblance of organization and you are the United States of America, which means you're entitled to having a different opinion. But until you actually change the law, Gavin Newsom, until Congress changes the law, by the way, it's not you, right? It's not you. It's not New York. It's not California. It is Congress that has to change this law. And if Congress doesn't change the law, then you're kind of up a creek without a paddle. And guess what? The president does have all the authority in the world to go in, and you can plead and plead on MSNBC with somebody who looks just like Rachel Maddow, because apparently they're cloning him over there, and it's not going to do any good.
Where's your decency, Mr. President? Stop. Rescind this order. It's illegal and unconstitutional. And I said it, I'll say it again, it's immoral. You're creating the conditions that you claim you're solving, and you're not. And you're putting real people's lives at risk.
Well, good news. Those people's lives will not be at risk because the California federal judge in the appellate court just made the decision that Donald Trump and his legal team are right. And you know why they're right? It's because of what I told you yesterday. Power to call up the National Guard, Title 10, U.S. Code 12406. Remember, 12406, U.S. Code 12406, Title 10. Federal statute allows for the president to, quote, call into federal service members and units of the National Guard in such numbers as he considers necessary to execute the laws of the United States. All right? Simple enough. Now, their little sticking point over and over again has been, oh, well, he's supposed to do this with the combination of the governor's support. And there is something that suggests, okay, they're supposed to do this with the governors, but what do you do when the governors are not actually playing ball? 1963 Alabama, right? You go in and you do what you got to do, which means you got the power to call up the National Guard. It exists for a reason. And so all these people that want to go on and on about state rights, okay, states have rights, but when it comes to something that is related to our border, and if there's one thing the federal government has jurisdiction over, it is the border. And who's in the country? That is all federal government. You can't just be your own country, California. I realize you'd like to. That's when, yes, Trump and the federal government and Congress, okay, Padilla, you have all these views. Guess what? You can change the law. But if you don't change the law, then the government is in charge of enforcing federal law. And so they're choosing to do so. So this has nothing to do with state rights, as the ladies on The View would like to tell you and walk you off the cliff. Right? That's their whole thing.
Now, is it warranted, or does this sort of escalate the situation? I mean, whatever happened to states' rights? I thought that was what you do, because you tell the state, this is what we're thinking of doing. You don't just send people in. You don't just send troops in. But what do I know? I've never run a state. But I don't really, when you come in and when you go into the donut shop to look for people and you're dressed in tactical gear, you're creating an issue. You're creating a problem. You want people to come, you've scared them. Even when people are supposed to be there, when they come to talk to the judge, you're arresting them right after. What is going on here?
I think what really matters from sort of a long view here is the fact that he is militarizing and deploying the Guard for the purpose of policing Americans' protest activity, right? Our freedom of speech, our freedom of assembly. And there's a very big, stark demarcation between military troops and law enforcement, public law enforcement, civilian law enforcement. Right. And you are an army turned inside to police its citizens can cause chaos, fascism. And so I think...
Chaos and fascism? Really? I mean, it seems to me that the chaos is actually coming from the protesters who actually have turned violent. You can't do that, okay? Kristi Noem making that very, very clear. By the way, they're making that clear in California. Oh, there's a sheriff down there. He's like, do not mess around because we're coming for you. And like, we mean business. He's really serious. Anyway, Gavin Newsom's argument is that, okay, well, you have to go through the governors of the state. Well, guess what? The appellate court judge said, nope, that's not the case. And the federal government does have this power. So this is a big freaking deal, ladies and gentlemen. And you know what? It's a good thing. It's a good thing. And I'm telling you, he's got a good legal team. He's got an excellent legal team, and they had 4 years to study this stuff, okay? 4 years on the sidelines to figure out just exactly how they would manage a situation like this. And you go back to 12406, and here we have it. The United States or any of the territories, commonwealths, or possessions is invaded or in danger of invasion by a foreign nation. Whenever this happens, quote, there is a rebellion. If there isn't a rebellion or danger of rebellion against the authority, hear that? Against the authority of the government of the United States, or the president is unable with the regular forces to execute the laws of the United States, which he's unable to, right? Because he's got ICE. He's trying to detain people with DHS and they're not letting him do it. The president may call into federal service members and units of the National Guard in any state in such numbers as he considers necessary to repel the invasion, suppress the rebellion, or execute the laws. Now, Gavin's like, well, wait a second, but don't they have to do this with, and I put this in red here, it shall be issued through the governors of the states. Okay, so that's where it got a little bit sketchy. But again, there's precedent. You got to go all the way back to 63 in Alabama, but there's precedent. This through the governors thing, it may not always work because you may have governors like you do in California that are on another side of all of this. They don't quite get it, right? They actually feel that they're their own country unto themselves. I mean, hey, if you guys want to secede, be our guest, right? And we don't have to deal with the liability. Everybody's moving out. Businesses are moving out of California anyway. Nobody wants to be there anymore. You guys are like a sinking ship. Everybody's moving to Texas or Florida or places where they can conduct business with a little bit less onerous a taxation system and hopefully a more pleasant environment because they're not dealing with all the stuff that you guys have put in place, which is, again, why you cannot have this kind of lawlessness. And it's amazing to me that this guy, one Gavin Newsom, is so clueless. He doesn't get it. I realize he wants to run for president. He's seeing this as his big opportunity. But you know what? He's never going to be president because he can't control his state. And if you can't manage a state, you certainly can't manage a country, Mr. Newsom.
On that note, are you confident that the president and Secretary Hegseth will honor this order? And then you've also mentioned that you would try to work with the president in the past.
Of course.
Has this situation changed your dynamic with the president?
No, because I will work with anyone to advance the interests of 40 million Americans that I happen to represent here in California. And so I've always maintained an open hand, not a closed fist. But I also am going to stand firm and tall and push back against lawlessness, against someone that does not believe in the rule of law, does not believe in constraints, does not believe in the Constitution, who is threatening judges, that threatens not to abide by orders, and Donald Trump better abide by these orders, or we have a constitutional crisis, the likes of which we haven't seen in our lifetime.
Wow.
Well, that will be determined.
Okay. Oh, wow. So he thinks we're going to have a constitutional crisis. They got this no kings thing going on. He thinks it's a constitutional crisis. And guess what? Within like 2 hours of him saying that last night, it was all turned around. The appellate court said, you know what? Donald Trump does have the power. So now the question becomes, in all seriousness, if Gavin Newsom does not play ball now, if he continues to tell his local law enforcement to not cooperate with the feds, then he is fully standing in violation of the law. Then he is the one creating the constitutional crisis. You see how that works? But I think this is kind of what they want, sadly.